Today is January 28th, 1975, and I'm interviewing in New York City Dr. Marvin Linick. The subject for our discussion today, or interview, is the question of the hospital in Munich and how it was obtained.
I was the public health officer of Munich at the time, and I'm referring to a period in the spring of 1946 when I knew that I was going to be relieved of my job and that the government would return and revert to the German civilians and I would return to the States. Among my friends and my associate workers was a Rabbi Abraham J. Klausner, with whom I'm still friends and whom I see occasionally, not having seen him later, having seen him not later than last week, as a matter of fact. When I was about to leave, Rabbi Klausner came and said, "Could I have a hospital for the Jews?" And I said, "What kind of patients do you intend?" He says, the Ausweich patients, the patients around Munich, who were at that time not housed, but because Munich was 80% destroyed, sleeping in setups, which were called which were at that time used by refugees, and these people were surrounding the city of Munich. And among them were many Jews. And he said he would like to have a hospital devoted to the Jews. And I, for reasons which will follow, said, "Abe, I knew him well. You'll have to forgive me if I refuse. I just don't see how I can turn this thing into a Jewish setup. There are many people here who are Jews who fall, as the others do, into the categories of hospital need, but to make it a nationalist thing would be falling right into the hands of the nationalist policies of Hitler, because Hitler always sought to make the Nazi, always sought to make it a Jewish issue where possible, and thereby blanket all the factors into that one herring barrel of destroy the Jew and you'll be rich, etc." He said, "But these people are now, we're past, we've got Hitler over." I said, "No, there are many people," I said, "who are not Jews, who helped the Jews and who fought Hitler. And if you segregate the Jew from them, I would consider it an absolute mistake, because it's really an anti-Nazi that we're dealing with. And if these people are anti-Nazis, we cannot segregate them on the basis of being Jewish anti-Nazis or non-Jewish anti-Nazis. Now, you can have this hospital," and I designated 2 such hospitals for anti-Nazis, and I would be most grateful if you did them.
What were the names of those hospitals?
At the moment they elude me, but I can look it up and find out, because I still have the records of my daily contact in Munich. But I don't at the moment recall exactly which hospital. It may have been the Rechts der Isar or Links der Isar. There were many hospitals, and I can't for the moment exactly recollect this hospital. But it was an ample hospital and a good one. And it was available, I said to Abe, to all people who participated against the Nazis. And I thought it would be an important piece of generosity for us to take those people who didn't have to submit to the Nazi, but voluntarily did so nevertheless, included within the concerned department that was expressed by by providing a hospital for them. Do you understand what I mean?
Right.
And I think that Abe was very happy, because he, at that time, was related to a Jewish organization, and working for the Jews meant taking care of the Jews, and I think it was an enlightening feature which he quickly participated in. And I also asked some of my friends whom I'd made in Munich, who supplied linens to the hospitals, to give these people priority, even though it were not so designated by the legalities and one of them actually went to jail. Yes, Ferdinand Stiegler went to jail for so doing. And I guess when I left, that was the last I heard of it at that time. That's the story that you want me to tell you, and that's what I'm telling you.
Now, what role did Ann Borden play in this?
Ann Borden was sort of Abe's assistant, Rabbi Klaus's assistant. She was also helping to relocate and to take care of and to take note of and to register the situation. Do you remember the name of the organization for which she worked?
JDC.
The JDC. Well, she was one of the JDC people who did whatever she was told to do. She was his assistant. We all became good friends because, in effect, we had a mutual purpose.
Did you were you involved in any other activity that Rabbi Klaus was working for?
No.
You never.
Well, I was involved in a lot of activity,
on
but nothing to do with Abe Klaus.
On behalf of European Jewry.
European Jewry. Well, I can tell you this, that I was a Jew and hence was a target for the Catholics and for others and so forth. I don't want to put it down just that way, but I felt if they wanted to attack me, they used the word Jew. Now, it so happened that Cardinal von Faulhaber was very busy getting people who were mandatory dismissals to retain their jobs. For example, USFET under Eisenhower made SS members mandatory dismissals. And it took very little to go to Cardinal von Faulhaber's office and have him write a letter such as the following. Ernst M. Hofer, age 50, joined the Nazi Party through foolishness in 1932. He is working well now in a hospital, and the nurses in the hospital tell me that he's doing an excellent job. I think it would be a mistake to remove him from office. And then he put the huge Catholic seal of the Cardinal onto the paper, and most of the American officers would be convinced that it was okay, and the guy would continue his job. Now, I couldn't see that because I saw the laxness with which this man approached these people, and if the SS people were mandatory dismissals, I could not possibly see him countermanding the orders of General Eisenhower. It was the purpose of the occupation was to the contrary. And having spoken to my commanding officer, whose name was Colonel Kurtz, he was subsequently, soon thereafter, killed by accident when a brick fell down, or a huge stone fell down from the Rathaus building when he was standing in conversation with other officers, and killed him. It was an accidental killing. I asked the colonel what he felt about letting him get away with it. He said, well, I have to leave it to you, and of course I feel the same way as you do, but I don't want to be a sole opponent in this position because, you know, the American population is maybe 1/3 Catholic, isn't it? And so I said, well, I don't think that the issue is the American population at all. And I said that we ought to get in touch with the Cardinal and ask him to desist therefrom, which we did through our public relations officer, and which he said he would do, but which he did not do, because it continued as before. And there was a second effort to ask him to desist from this kind of influence, which was just as ineffective. Well, it so happened that my letter was published all over the world, the letter which I just quoted, Erwin M. Hofer, age 50. And time passed, not to maybe a couple of weeks, and on a Saturday morning, the Colonel Kurtz, called me, and he said, Doctor, there's somebody here from Frankfurt, and I think you ought to come down. I received in that message a note of seriousness, which meant come down. And I got into the command car. Oh, I think actually I had, my driver took me down to the Rat House. And as I walked into the room, which was occupied by Colonel Kurtz, he was the military governor of our detachment in Munich, I noticed the room was different from its usual casual self. There was great formality. The colonel sat in the middle, and when I walked in and opened the door, he stood up and he saluted me, and I saluted him.
You were a major?
Yes, I was a major then. And he said, "Come in, doctor, we've been waiting for you," in a tone which was very formal. And I noticed the man sitting in the chair, who was dressed like a cavalry officer, and also well endowed on the kisser, with the red marks and the splotchy marks that are indicative of either outdoors and booze in singular or in combination. And he had a huge bunch of spinach, which designated regular army over his left side. And he was not one of us that I had seen there previously. He wore the puttees of a cavalryman. And there was no cavalry. Colonel said to this man, "Major," that's what he was, "why don't you talk to the doctor? He's a regular guy. What is it that you want to know? He'll be glad to tell you." The colonel, the major who sat thus, seemed annoyed. He seemed irritated. And he reached as though he were going to pull something out of his waistcoat, out of his jacket pocket, and then pulled his hand away. At which point I said, "Major, I'm going fishing. That's my date. If there's anything I can do, I'd be happy if you let me know now, because I'm holding up my friends on the fishing trip." And he reached in and he pulled out a piece of paper. "Show it to him," the colonel said. And I picked it up, and this is what I read. G1. You know, this is up in headquarters, G1. Or something or other. 2G1. Unfavorable TWX, unfavorable information released, Foul Harbor. 2. Jewish officer, Munich, allegedly responsible. 3. Investigate and report at once for the commanding general. And he signed General Atcock. And I read this and I fumbled for a minute in my mouth and I said, "Well, shit, this is the showdown." This is the showdown. And here I match it or I don't. I didn't think much longer, because as I walked, I said, "Forgive me. I'm going to take this into the can. I've got to urinate. And when I come back, I'll give you 5 copies. Is that what you want?" He said, "Of my answer." He says, "Yes." I said, "I won't be very long, Colonel. Excuse me." And I saluted him and I walked out. And in the hallway, sitting at a desk, was a Captain Baer, who was one of our detachment, who was a German by birth, and who was writing a letter to his girlfriend in Manhattan, or in Brooklyn. And I said, Kurt Baer, pull that letter out. I'm going to take a leak and come back and dictate something." He sensed the seriousness of the situation before I even spoke to him. And he pulled a letter out, put in 5 copies, make 6 copies. I went into the can and I urinated and came out, and I says, "Take the following letter. 1. Unfavorable information Foul Harbor released after several efforts made to deter him from opposing the purposes of the occupation, as per circular letter so-and-so. 2. This was done after repeated efforts to deter him failed. 3. This was done in the interest of the occupation." And I began to say, and I did say, but I tore that letter up and made him rewrite it, "This has nothing to do with being Jews." I just omitted that, and I thought I'd hand this guy a personal message to him for personal satisfaction. And I took it upon, and I, Marvin, Linick, Major, MC, hereby state that I am solely responsible for this information. And I did that for a very smart reason, I think, because I didn't involve the detachment, which also had letters like this. But in so doing, stuck my own neck out, knowing that they couldn't let me down at that time. If I involved them against their wish, they might have resented it. I don't know where I got all my wisdom in those days, but it worked out this way. I came back to the office, to the man with the letters, and I said, how many copies do you want? He says, oh, I don't know, many, 1, 2, 3. I said, well, here's 3. 2, between you and me, I'm going to wipe myself with. 1 I'm going to keep as a memorandum of idiocy in the United States Army. You tell General Adcock for me that if he were here and spoke these words that he sent you in writing, I'd let him know who I am in more certain terms than I could let him know now. Because I don't want to pollute my message with the inferences of his comments. Underneath this uniform is a very good American, devoted with at least as much, obligation to duty in this war as he and all his ilk are. Tell him I'd like to slap him right across the jaw and do more if I have to, because people like that don't merit the dignity that mentions his behavior in a letter in the United States Army at this time. We would be falling right into the hands of Hitler.
So it was after this incident that Rabbi Klausner approached you for the hospital?
This was during the incident.
Or during the incident.
Yeah,
So
the point is this. The colonel said, take it easy, Doc, because I was really getting dramatic. I says, I'm sorry, Colonel, if I've upset anybody. He said to me, so the others should hear, this is not the only letter. This is the letter that was published. There were lots more, Major. Tell him that the detachment is ready to back Dr. Linick. And when I got home, I had visitors from the 3rd Army Press.
You got home here?
No, I got home in Munich, to Mother's.
Munich,
I got a phone call from Victor Bernstein, Kathleen McLaughlin of the Times, Arthur Oakeshott of Reuters. They came over and they met in my house and we killed a bottle of cognac. And they said to me, if anybody touches you, anybody, he said, you have nothing to worry about. He says, we have more on that guy, Faulhaber. I mean, him in bed with his brother in the nude. I said, leave me out of this nonsense. He said, no, I just want you to know that the press takes care of its people. They said, and I said, well, thank you, that was all. They gave me the reassurance of knowing that nothing terrible could happen. Now, what I'm saying now should not be printed.
No, it won't.
And that undelectable morsel about him and his brother is not necessary. There's always that when in the army. Always just the minute gangsterism that goes on, I guess, in Congress too. This one's Catholic, this one's this. But I had the good fortune of being brought up in the city of New York, where we were taught as children to stand on our own 2 feet, Jews or otherwise. And I couldn't forget that, and I couldn't back down on that. And I think it's one of the heroic times of my life, because it was with ease that I did it. I felt very good about it. They also threatened to publish articles about me, that I was running around with a German girl who was a Nazi, which is my present wife. You understand?
Yeah.
And whatnot. They also, the CIC intercepted letters where they knew that I was going to the funeral of somebody who died in my service, a German public health officer. There's a good place to nail him. Do you understand? And so forth. And, well, I'd like to write what I'm telling you. I'd like to write a book. I think it's a good time to write a book because the world seems to have forgotten the meaning of Nazism. The world seems to not know. They don't know Russians. As a matter of fact, when it started when my kids grew up and they went to school, they were told that it was the Russians we were fighting, not by direct. Do you remember that? My children never knew. Asked me, whom did we fight the war with? The time of McCarthy. Whom did we fight the war with? The Russians or the Germans? The argument was not with the Germans. It was with the Russians. It was with the Germans. The argument was with the Russians. So the Russians were quickly associated in the child's mind because they must have been the ones we were fighting with. I hope I've told you something that you can find useful, because this is accurate and this is factual. More details I can give you, because I do have the daily reports for the 13 months I was there.
Well, I'm interested in particularly the aspect of the hospital. Anything you might be able to tell me about that?
If the Jews were the ones and the sole ones, but I could not. There was nobody.
As a doctor, you could not.
I would not, as a human being. I would not give. I mean, there were people who didn't have to get killed, who didn't have to go to Dachau, who didn't have to go to, who openly placed themselves in that position of opposition which placed them therein. How could we omit these and save the leftover Jews, some of whom were left over under very suspicious circumstances?
Okay.
I'm not insularly pro-Semitic, to that extent. No, I was born a Jew in a very Orthodox household. I was bar mitzvahed, and I knew my kapitel b'halei very well. And I have a right to live a Jew and to die a Jew, and I will be buried among Jews. But I don't think that the Jew is the chosen person above all people, without regard to the function that these people do in life. My children are half Jewish. I can't look upon them as unimportant because they're half Jewish. Can I? My wife says she'd like to be Jewish, so she became a Jewess against my wish.
Well, then they're not half Jewish, they're whole Jewish.
No, because I permitted her to do that when they were young, with the condition that when they grew up, that she would tell them the truth. We couldn't live a lie after a certain age. So she told them the truth later. Now, there are three of them, three girls. The eldest one is a doctor, the second is a year younger, and the third is a year younger than her. And they're all people who take care of all the little people. Because my wife said, I'm a Jew, and it's easy for me to become a Jew, because you're a Jew, and besides that, isn't the Jew the little guy? To that extent, I accepted it. You understand? I like what you're doing. You have a very nice, gemütlicher face. If I can help you in giving you some insight into that which will answer the questions for you that you have,
No,
I'll be very happy to do it, because I was not a kid then, you know. I'd been through a lot, and I'd like to be helpful to anybody. I've got death certificates